Hello, folks. It's KJ here, and it is a beautiful Christmas morning. My brother and I are spending time with loved ones and families, so I thought I would leave you with this bonus episode, otherwise known as a replay episode, of one of our favorites. Enjoy, and we will see you next week.
Hey, Kev, Let's follow this trail over here. This looks like there might be something waiting down there.
All right. Hey, wait a minute. Do you hear that?
Yeah, I thought it was just me. What the heck is that?
I don't know what that is. Whoa, do you smell that too?
That's unbelievable. Hey, look.
What the?
Hey, look, those branches are moving over there.
What the heck is that?
Holy cow, is that what I think it is? Look at that thing.
Oh my God.
It's a freaking Sasquatch. Welcome to the Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings and Encounters podcast. I'm your host, W.J. Sheehan. Hello, everybody, and once again, thank you for joining my brother and I for what is going to be a stupendous podcast. My name is W.J. Sheehan, and I'm the author of a series of books entitled Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings and Encounters. And I have a little surprise for you today, because Volume 8 is now out in paperback and ebook on Amazon, as well as the other volumes 1 through 7. And for those who are interested, volumes 1 through 6 are available at Audible, iTunes, and Amazon in audiobook format. So we're glad to have you along today, and I'm going to invite in my brother Kevin. Kevin, how are you?
Hey, Bill, how's it going?
Pretty good, pretty good. It's warming up around here.
Yeah, hot and humid today. First really hot and humid day. It's supposed to be 90-something tomorrow.
Wow, yeah. 90-something. We were at 83 today, I saw, and that's pretty warm for these parts, you know?
Yeah.
90-something, good grief. Yeah. Makes you want to go out and mow the lawn. Do some lawn gymnastics or lawn yoga.
Perfect. I'll be doing the Squatch pose.
I gotta see what the Squatch pose is.
You know, the running Squatch.
Oh, the running Squatch. Yes.
That's an official yoga pose now, I think.
And one of my coworkers yesterday was joking with me about her brother-in-law who had purchased a bar of Dr. Squatch soap. Have you heard of it?
No.
Well, I didn't think she was kidding me. I thought she was, being truthful.
Could
then
be,
she
yeah.
pulled up online a picture, an ad, and it's an assortment of different bars of soap. There's like basil, Dr. Squatch soap, and some other stuff that looks like tar. And the picture on the packaging looks like a cross between Spock from Star Trek and a guy covered with a lot of hair.
Awesome.
Awesome stuff. Dr. Squatch.
Very cool.
Oh, man. So, my brother, what do you got up your sleeve
Well,
today?
before we get into the Cryptid in the News segment, I was going to ask you if you saw the latest Skinwalker Ranch this week.
Wow, yeah.
I think it was episode 7 for our listeners out there.
Yeah, I did. And as you know, that was the closing segment for this trial season, which I hope they continue.
Yeah, I think they'll continue. They left us hanging, right?
Yeah, well, it's all according to viewership. I mean, right. I'm into it. But I hope they do well with the numbers they're looking for to keep it rolling,
Yeah.
But, man, they came across some really oddball stuff out there, did they not?
Yeah, I mean, it really looks like it's some kind of either receiver or transmitter dish or maybe both with to and from something up in the sky, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that whole scenario with launching the rockets up to the level they believed that this focal point was at.
Yep.
And then those little UFOs appearing, glimmering in the sky.
Absolutely.
And just some really strange and another real odd thing was when they let up that balloon and it basically disappeared.
Yeah, as soon as it got to 5,000 feet or whatever the magic number that they predicted would be, all the equipment went out on it, and then they never recovered it either.
Yeah, very odd. And the guy that brought it there from the university, this other doctor, he was like, this never happened before.
Exactly.
So very odd. And then, of course, we had the Falcon and the Dragon capsule.
That was awesome, the launch.
Fantastic. I watched it twice.
I did too. It's so funny you say that. And I was just like, man, with all of the bad stuff that's going on in the world, I hope that this launch is going to be successful. And not only was it successful, it was spectacular.
Yeah. I mean, I was riveted and just rooting them on, and everything went flawlessly. And hats off to Elon Musk and his SpaceX crew, man.
I mean, them landing that Falcon 9 first stage out in the ocean on a remote drone barge, like right in the center of the target. Like, holy cow.
Yeah, it just really, really remarkable. And it just shows you, with all of the numbskulls shipping American manufacturing offshore for the past 25, 30 years, America was known for ingenuity, for genius, for quality for so long. And then we threw it away, and here comes this spark of life in the company SpaceX, showing just exactly what can be done right here on terra firma when people put their minds and spirits to it. It was just incredible.
And also, private industry. Like of course, I'm a high-tech guy, and our listeners would be surprised by that based on what I do on this podcast. But I'm a high-tech entrepreneurial guy, and I thought it's just super cool that they come in, the folks at SpaceX, and it's a partnership with NASA for sure. And I think it's great that it's the NASA astronauts as well. But they come in a relatively short period of time and do what's never been done before. Just super cool and just challenging all assumptions. Like, why do you have to throw this first stage away? We could just land it on a remote drone in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, like really?
You can imagine the NASA guys originally were probably like, you are nuts, And just even dumb things, and then I'll get off of it, we'll move on. But, I thought it was cool in that special leading up to the first launch where they were talking about that they basically do the whole assembly of the rockets and that right there in Cape Canaveral. Like, they don't subcontract anything out. And that seems so obvious that would be better and more efficient and faster. But yet I don't think we ever did that before.
Yeah, all under one roof, all under the control of the same people.
Yeah.
Just awesome.
Way more efficient, much faster, and probably a better quality product as well.
Oh, well, I'm glad, Kev. Just absolutely awesome, man. And, I was around, of course, when the first Saturn V went up with John Glenn, and then the orbiting the moon and the lunar landings. And I remember seeing interior views of the capsule and inside the lunar module with all of the rows of toggle switches and knobs and dials. And you look inside that Dragon capsule, man, it looks like something out of Star Wars.
It's like literally the inside of a Tesla automobile. A couple of big touch screens, just no steering wheel, but super cool.
Yeah, so sleek, streamlined. It almost looks fake.
It does. It does almost look fake. Like there's not enough there for this thing to really do what it does. It's awesome.
All right,
super
brother.
Cool. I'm glad you brought that up. I That feels like it's already 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, well, our audience, we're Americans, man, and this is great stuff. And we should be excited, and we should be chatting it up about it. So here we go.
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't get a chance to look at how many people watched it, but I hope a lot of people watched it because it was spectacular, and it was a feel-good story at a time where there's not a lot to feel good about, honestly.
Yeah, well, that's good,
Yeah. Cool. All right. We're going into the land of cryptids and other oddities.
Excellent.
I got a cool story for you guys tonight.
All right.
So this is going to be about the Hopkinsville Goblins, or they're also known as the Kelly Goblins. Do you know these, Bill?
I might have had a couple of beers with them. I'm not sure.
And I said Hopkinton. It's actually Hopkinsville. Sorry, I misspoke, folks. And it comes from Kentucky. So the bigger town in the area is Hopkinsville, Kentucky. It's on the western edge of Kentucky, down near the Tennessee border. And it's this cryptid has a ton of information written about it. And I'll tell you, you'll probably hear me ruffling around tonight in some papers because there are hundreds of pages of quality information out there on this cryptid.
Unbelievable. Now, what was the second name?
Kelly. Kelly is the name of the town where they were actually seen.
Okay.
And I'll tell you who they are, these goblins. But the bigger town is Hopkinsville. So you'll hear them described as both, but it really happened, the sighting happened on a farm in Kelly, Kentucky, and there were 11 eyewitnesses of the creatures.
These 11 eyewitnesses weren't shiners, were they?
Good question. They actually, the chief of police, who's a pretty reputable guy we'll talk about, he searched the house when he went out there and saw no signs of any alcohol, including shine.
Except for the jug that he took.
There was none left after he left.
All right, let her rip, bro.
Yeah, so the story goes, and the one main report that's out there that you can download is called Close Encounter at Kelly and Others of 1955. So that report is a couple of hundred pages long, and it's super cool. And then I also found some good information on with our friends at history.com, tying it all together. So this story, or this sighting, it happened on the night of August 21st, 1955. So get a picture of that super cool 1955 Chevy Bel Air two-door in your head, and that's the era we're talking about.
Awesome. And down there, well, the whole country back then had like a third or less of the population we have now.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And it's back in the time where you started to see the recordings and reportings of UFOs, right? Going back after World War II, kind of 1948, and this one, 1955.
Awesome.
And the way this story started was this family, extended family, by the name of the Suttons, 11 of them, arrived breathlessly at the Hopkinsville police station down in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. And their story went to the police chief there of their house being kind of attacked by otherworldly beings. And it would become one of the most detailed and baffling accounts of an alien close encounter that we have on record. So like I said, I never heard of this before until I came across it. But there was a ton of information out there about this encounter.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's, again, the fact that the whole clan, now, of course, we'll learn more about it as you're telling about it, but the whole clan rushes over to the police station to fess up to what they just saw. Like, hey, we gotta do something,
Yeah, and it's small town USA. And like the police chief said, these were not the kind of people that would come down to the police station, kind of under any circumstance. let alone 11 of them showing up in the middle of the night.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Wow. Must have been like the Keystone Cops rolling into the
We'll
sheriff's
get into
office.
that a little bit. So here's how it started. So and these are the accounts given to the police. So kind of on record with the police. They said at about 7 p.m. on this very hot Sunday evening, we were talking about hot and humid, so it was one of those nights, one of the family friends that was visiting, named Billy Ray Taylor, was out getting some water from the backyard, and he saw a silvery object, and the quote is, "real bright, with an exhaust all the colors of the rainbow. It came silently toward the house, passed over it, stopped in the air, and then dropped straight to the ground."
Wow.
And when you look at, there's maps of this and stuff like that, it looks like it dropped about 200 yards out behind the house. There was like a gully, and it set down in that gully.
And who was watching at the time? Just the one fella?
Just the one fella.
Okay.
So he went out to get water, and he comes in basically, right, and everyone's there, and he tells them, like, "You aren't going to believe this." And, they basically say, "Yeah, you're right, we're not going to believe it." So they're laughing at him just like you're laughing, and they don't take him seriously at all, right? So that's at 7 o'clock. And now it turns out downtown in Hopkinsville, they also saw like 3 unidentified flying objects, look like flying saucers, come over the town, heading north, which is towards Kelly, where this farm is.
Wow.
So kind of interesting, where you have these dual sightings that could corroborate each other, right?
Right, and of course one doesn't know about the other,
No,
but
they don't know about
they're
the
all
other.
seeing it.
Exactly. So then about an hour later, their dog, right, they're all in the house. It's about 9 o'clock at night. The dog's barking like crazy. And 2 of the folks, one is named Lucky, and Billy Ray Taylor, who went out to get water, went out the back door of the house and saw a strange glow in the midst. In the midst of this strange glow, they see this small bipedal creature. Yeah.
So
and the dog, goes crazy. It hides underneath the house and doesn't come out for the rest of the night.
So there was an hour, though, in between the first guy reporting what he saw coming down and everybody yucking it up, and then before they went back out again?
Well, he saw the flying saucer. They blew him off, right? Come on, flying saucer, really? All the colors of the rainbow coming out the back of it? And then this dog's going crazy, so they're like, okay, let's go see what the dog is barking at. They look out across the field behind the house, and again, in this report, which I'll put on our website, a link to the download, they have maps of like where all these sightings were, numbered, like when they saw it, where it was, what they saw. But they see this glow out in the field, and they're looking at this glow like, what the heck is that? And out of the glow, so not a flying saucer, but just some kind of glowing thing in the field, they see this small, kind of human-like thing come out of the glow.
Very strange. And
we'll get into the full description here, but it's about 3.5 feet tall. It's got an oversized head, almost like if you think of like a raindrop overturned. So kind of the fat part of the raindrop is like the dome of the head.
Right.
And then the point of the raindrop is kind of the chin.
Okay.
And then it has these giant like ears that are like, I don't know, gremlin ears, right?
Jeez.
Kind of these big triangles out to the side, super oversized, and these giant yellow glowing eyes.
Good grief.
Yeah. And then it has these straight little legs that look like they have like suction cups on the bottom of them, so like no feet. And then its arms are super long, like they almost come down to the ground. And on the end of its arms, I'll put the sketches up too. They made sketches, like the police did based on the accounts. And it has like these kind of talons that like collapse together into a point at the end of its arms.
Great.
Yeah, perfect. Just what you want to run into,
man.
right? Yeah.
A lot of people through the years that have had the opportunity to film or see orbs, these glowing spheres of light. Many people have said they believe they saw something inside the orb, like something.
Exactly. And that's exactly, I was reading some of those reports, because when they started seeing these, back in the late 40s and 50s, I would say about half of the accounts said that they could see something in it, like driving it,
right,
flying
like it was a pilot or contained in it.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. Super cool.
Yeah, very, very certainly in the other oddities category.
That's my specialty.
Yes, it's super odd.
Yeah. So they see this thing coming, walking out of this glow, this creature thing. And again, there's sketches of them. I'll put them up on the website, BigfootTerrorInTheWoods.com. They're super cool, very detailed, done right at that time. And so you'd like these two guys, right, Lucky and Billy Ray. Mm-hmm. What do? They grab a 20 gauge and a 22 rifle, and they start shooting at the little man.
Yeah, unfortunate.
So they say that the thing raises its hands, and they start shooting at it, and it does what they call a flip backwards. So kind of like, bang, it gets hit, it does a flip in the air, lands back on its feet, and then it fled away into the darkness.
Wow.
Yeah.
Didn't get knocked down, though.
Well, kind of flipped over backwards.
Right.
They keep describing, quote unquote, flip or flipped.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. And you can't assume that two guys that have guns, neither one of them hit it.
Oh, no. They act like it was flipped because it got hit.
Yeah, that's
but that it's not hurt by it, so it's got some kind of, who knows, force field around it or protective suit or exoskeleton, whatever.
Right.
And then shortly, so they go back in the house, they tell everybody what they're seeing, and just after that, they see a similar creature appear at the side window, or maybe the same creature. And of course, these are screens, right, like on a cabin in southwestern Kentucky in summertime, and they see this thing pop up at the screen window looking in, and they again start firing at it right through the screen.
Yeah, what else are you going to do, man? Throw the lead out.
Exactly. They're throwing the lead at the critters. Then they hear something out front of the house. So this is all happening in the back. And Taylor steps outside, and it's got you could imagine like an overhanging roof, right, on the front of the house.
Okay.
Like you'd see if you drove by one of these old cabins.
Absolutely.
And Lucky is behind him. And as he walks out beyond the edge of the roof, this claw-like hand reaches down and touches his hair.
Great.
Yeah, and the whole group sees this from inside the house, like from inside the doorway. And Taylor jumps back, and Lucky shoots at the thing up on the roof, and the thing kind of floats over into a tree. He shoots at it again, and it kind of floats out of the tree and scurries away into the woods.
So it's like they were invincible to shots fired.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Very wild.
Yeah, that is freaking crazy weird.
Yeah.
Now, I have to ask you, you mean these people didn't have Anderson triple pane windows on their cabin?
Let me tell you, those people still don't have Anderson triple pane windows.
With solar guard? The solar guard may have protected them if they had it.
The triple E rated reflective glass or whatever it is.
Alien repellent glass.
Alien repellent. That's why it's kind of green when the sun shines on it. I never thought of that.
I think we're onto something. Wow. So what else happened?
So they, after that, so they shoot at it, I don't know, it's like 12 times, several of these. They never see more than one at the same time, but they assume that there's more than one. But when you look at some of the newspaper articles and stuff that were written, they talk about 20 or 25 of these things, but the family never talks about that. They're like, oh, the newspaper went wild with it, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. The family thinks it's definitely more than one, but they never saw more than one at the same time.
Yeah, they can't corroborate it by seeing a group of them together.
Right.
But
then they take off. And they go to the police station. All of them go. Mainly, I think, because no one wanted to stay in the house. Right? You got these creatures there. You all have seen it. You're not drinking. You're shooting at the things. You saw the flying saucer ahead of time that you were laughing about. And now you're like, holy cow, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
So they all pile into multiple vehicles. They drive down the road. I think it's like 7 miles. And they go to the police station. They have policemen on duty, calls in the chief. The state police is called. The state police come. They call the local newspaper. Everybody heads out back to the house that night. They hang around for like an hour, hour and a half, looking at everything. They see bullet holes, in the side of the house, and they see the shotgun shells out in the yard, in the front and the back, and they see how shaken up everyone is. And apparently, the matriarch of the family, the mother, she was somebody who's super conservative. Basically everyone says could not tell a lie. Like if she said it happened, it happened.
Sure.
And they interview her, and she's like, yeah, this is absolute, no doubt about it. This is what happened. I saw it too.
Yeah.
And they're all out there. Now, we'll get to this in a minute, but the place is lit up like the Empire State Building, right, with all these police and newspaper folks out there. And they end up, doing the investigation. They're convinced. They write in their reports, something really did happen out here based on how shaken up these people are. And that there's no sign of alcohol or anything like that. And they see that they really did fire guns and stuff inside the house, which is a big deal, right?
Certainly.
Yeah. So they end up leaving. They shut off all the lights in the house. They're trying to settle down and go to bed. And the mother of the house, let's call her Mom Sutton, she is laying in bed and feels like something's watching her. She opens up her eyes and she's looking out the screen window of her bedroom, and she sees this creature again looking in the window.
Oh, my goodness.
Right, and she writes about it in multiple accounts where she blinks her eyes, she closes her eyes because she's like, I can't really be seeing this, right? And as she opens her eyes 4 times, and the thing is still there. And then she wakes up her husband next to her and says, you're not going to believe it. This thing is right there. And he's like, I'm going to shoot it. And she's like, no, don't shoot it. Look what happened before when you shot it. It just got worse. I don't think they're going to hurt us. And he says, I'm going to shoot it. He grabs the shotgun next to the bed. Boom, boom, right through the screen again. So they need some new screens out there at the minimum.
Yeah, a lot of mosquitoes in the house that night.
Yeah. And, then the thing's gone. They turn on the lights, and they start to reach, kind of a slightly experimental conclusion that these things don't like the lights. So maybe that's why they weren't there when all the police were there, right? Wow. And the place was lit up like the Empire State Building.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, super crazy. So the police and the investigators all come back the next day during the day around 2:00 in the afternoon, and they go through the whole thing. They see what they're talking about. They see the shells again outside, more shells. And it's interesting. They go out in the field and they see like where they were talking about seeing this glowing thing. And there's something about the grass that's actually glowing out there.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Some type of, who knows?
Who knows?
Radiation doesn't make things glow.
They actually described it. It's interesting you say that. I can't think of the chemical that like they put in the older analog watches that glows.
Right.
Makes the hands glow. I just can't think of that. And that's as I recall, is slightly radioactive.
Yeah, that phosphorescent stuff whatever that made the dials. Yeah. It wasn't going to hurt you.
No, but not enough to hurt you.
Yeah, it was some type of radioactive
you probably don't want to eat
dust.
It,
Wow.
Yeah, so they come back, they don't see anything, and these folks never saw anything again, but then in the investigations, they started to tie it together with the fact that others saw, UFOs that night in the area flying that way.
Wow.
And then down the road is an Army fort as well. And they notified them, and they were supposed to do like a full investigation. The government was supposed to do an investigation, and they never saw anyone come out to talk about it, but they wondered if they interviewed people that saw it at the fort.
I wonder, I don't know, but I wonder if that Army base that was so-called down the road, if they had missile launching capability at that time.
Yeah, I don't know. Right after World War II, I would probably say that not yet, like on the edge of it, right?
Yeah, because, when those Nike bases, those Nike silos started being set up, the Cold War was engaged with Russia pretty quickly after World War II. You know the deal. There was some generals like Patton who wanted to invade Russia. He thought
he just wanted to invade everybody.
Yeah, he wanted to just keep fighting with his army, but he was under the impression it was
MacArthur too.
MacArthur, yeah, that there was going to be trouble, Wow,
he's going after him, taking names.
Yeah, unbelievable.
But they, so that's what happened. Again, I touched on the surface of it. There's hundreds of pages of information on this. Super interesting. And then folks went back, like, this big document I talked about, Close Encounter at Kelly and others of 1955. That was written by Isabel Davis and Ted Blocher for the Center for UFO Studies. And they wrote that in 1978. And they went back and interviewed a lot of people in the town about this and wrote about it, in hundreds of pages, and included the police chief, some of the policemen, some of the state troopers, and some of the family. And it's pretty interesting. Apparently, especially the family, this gets to, Bill, when we often talk about, if you saw a Bigfoot, would you tell everybody? The family was like ridiculed nonstop and kind of, damaged emotionally after telling people about this sighting.
Yeah.
So they said basically everyone descended on them, wanting to basically set up shop on their front lawn, selling, alien dolls or whatever they were selling back in in the 50s, and just making fun of them too.
Yep.
So, when they went back and wanted to interview them, including the matriarch of the family, she was very hesitant. They finally did get an interview with her, but it was interesting. Like she said, I will only comment on things that I actually saw, but nothing else.
Unfortunately, this is the way. More times than not, this is what happens. Somebody is trying to just talk about what happened, and they end up becoming the laughing stock, whatever you want to call it, and then they look back and say, geez, I should have just shut up about it. Unfortunately, that's what happens,
So I gotta end on one note. So, all of these stories of other oddities, right, and cryptids too, they always or typically have a section where someone comes up with the explanation for what the people saw.
I got to hear this.
For Bigfoot, it's always a bear.
Uh-huh.
Right. So what do you think the explanation is by one person at least that wrote about for these little men? What do you think they really were?
Well, I know what they were. When the Wizard of Oz was finished filming, the flying monkeys had nowhere to go.
Oh, the flying monkeys.
Yeah, so they inhabited the woods in Tennessee.
Well, your explanation is much better than the explanation that was given. This person said that many of these alien encounter stories were likely great horned owls.
Yeah.
Listen to this.
Yeah.
Because the owls have long wings that could be mistaken for arms. And they also have talons, and they said that these alien creatures had talons.
Right.
And they have yellow eyes, long ears, and a round head that might match the little men description.
Yeah. And of course,
get this, it gets better. As for their metallic shine and glow,
yeah,
they could have easily been reflecting moonlight off of their feathers.
I can't see anything. I can't find any holes with that. But the one thing I'm wondering is about the ability of a great horned owl to backflip after rifle shot and buckshot.
And come walking back to you. That would be one tough owl. He didn't mention that.
Oh, my God. Well, that was good stuff, Kev.
It was a great horned owl with a Kevlar vest.
Yeah. Yeah. Kevlar before it was invented.
Yeah, but it's an awesome story, and it actually, it sounds pretty real, as crazy as it sounds, But when you read again all of the information about the integrity of the individuals, and again, this is a group that didn't really want attention. They weren't trying to get the most views on YouTube. There was no such thing, and they were really, kind of shunning the attention for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And that's an incredible story. And we'll talk about those who shun attention in the account that I'm going to bring out here, because there are no names mentioned, as you're about to hear, other than the names of the two children. But this couple, this sighting or encounter was brought to my attention from a couple that resides in Toronto, Canada. And as I begin, the husband said that my wife and I are amateur naturalists, with our home being filled with books and artifacts from years spent hiking in the woods. We have pressed leaf and fern collections, castings from wolves and other animal tracks, and all kinds of other oddities collected during our many excursions throughout the years. We have handmade lamps made from tree limbs that were gathered in the forest, and some of our furnishings were handcrafted by artisans from the forest to our north. I only mention this that you can kind of get a feel for the type of people we are. At the time of this sighting, our two children were 9 and 12 years old, with Sophia being the oldest and Eddie our youngest. At least twice a year we would all go camping, but we spent many other days hiking and scavenging in a variety of locations together. One of our favorite spots was the Helen Bar Lookout Trail in Mississauga Provincial Park. It's not too far from Toronto, and it is absolutely exceptional, an exceptional place to hike and camp, having been there more than a dozen times before. The trail takes a few hours to traverse, so we generally bring a picnic lunch along to eat. And once we reach the midway point, typically in an area known as the Second Lookout, which is close to a lake named Helen Bar. There are many animals in this region, including deer, moose, wolves, and it's not uncommon to see wolf tracks on this trail, because it is also used by the packs at times. In fact, this is where we had taken the casts of wolf prints, which we have at home. Many people are afraid of wolves, but this is an unfounded fear. They're actually quite shy and have extremely keen senses of both smell and sight. The only indication of the wolf's presence that most people will ever experience is their howling, which we've heard on many occasions. This time, we had decided to travel in September. October and September are the rut season for the moose, and we were hoping to stay out of harm's way and actually see a moose on this outing, which is easier said than done. As large as they are, it is extremely rare to see one here, and I will do my best to give you a good idea of what we were seeing and what you would see if you were there with us. The trail is large, oblong loop. The trail is a large, oblong loop which heads out towards Helen Bar Lake and then swings back around with the return leg running alongside of Semi-White Lake. These are two entirely different bodies of water, with Helen Bar being very shallow and Semi-White being much deeper. Semi-White is home to lake trout, whitefish, and a lot of minnows, most of which like the deeper water, while on the other hand, Helen Bar is less than 15 feet deep at its deepest point, but it does support a robust population of brook trout. Passing the boulder field, you start to enter into the heart of what is known as an upland forest, an area filled with red oak, yellow birch, and sugar maples. All of these trees are at the extreme northern limits of where they can grow and thrive. Directly alongside of them, you begin to see what is known as the northern boreal forest, where spruce and balsam firs take over. While on the trail, you walk at the very cusp of the transition zone between these two different forests, and as you continue your hike, you also begin to see many stumps which are remnants of the logging for white pine, which occurred here years ago. As you continue along this route, you'll see a large swath cut out through the forest, which was done intentionally by the province of Ontario. The young growth which springs up in these areas provides reachable and edible food for the deer population. As you approach what is known as the first lookout, you are confronted by steep rock faces which stand in stark contrast to the beautiful forests that surround them. Both from the first and second lookouts, you can see the shallow and lovely Lake Helen Bar. And in this area between the two lookouts, there are many large trees which have been uprooted by the wind, leaving their enormous root balls exposed. On this day, we began our descent from this second lookout and walked about a quarter of a mile, passing many of these fallen trees. When just up ahead of us, a large bull moose emerged from the forest, more than likely after a trip to Lake Semi-White, which is one of their favorite feeding zones. They love the aquatic plants that grow in the shallows at the lake's edge. He was right in our path, making mating calls as he lumbered along, and we didn't want to get too close, so we started to backtrack. As we did so, we snapped some pictures and tried to enjoy the moment while remaining cautious. He seemed as though he was not going to move on anytime soon, so we decided to back up near the area of the fallen trees and hang out for a while. Our only other alternative being to hike all the way back the way we had come. As we were waiting, Sophia told me she saw something come out from behind a tree. There were quite a few dead trees, so I asked her which one. And she pointed to a large root ball, maybe 150 feet away from us. As we all stood there focusing on this giant root ball, my eyes were drawn to a large black furry arm that was wrapped through and around some of the old roots extending from the side of this ball. No sooner had I begun focusing on it than did a large head jut out from behind the ball, and it was looking right at us. Almost simultaneously, my daughter and wife said, "Oh my God, look at that." The head started twitching back and forth in a crazy manner, moving back and forth incredibly fast, and the arm was pulled back out of view. My daughter told me that she was scared, and both children moved closer to us. I reached down to grab a large piece of branch, breaking it off into a club, and as I did so, This thing took off at a frantic pace, running through the trees. It moved so quickly that it was almost a blur, and we couldn't hear it crashing and thrashing through the trees as it ran. We were absolutely in shock, and my daughter was so frightened that she was crying. After a long minute, we started to walk back to where the moose had been, looking back over our shoulders the entire time. Thankfully, when we reached that area again, the bull had moved on. About 45 minutes later, we were back at camp and safe. Though brief, we had a good enough look at the creature that I can describe it in detail. I would estimate that its arm was over 5 feet in length and heavily covered in what seemed to be thick, blackish-brown fur. When it moved into view, we could see a portion of its body through the root ball of the downed tree, and it looked like a big gorilla. But of course, we all know that there are no gorillas present here or anywhere else in the States. Even if one fell to earth here, it could never survive the climate. This was a Bigfoot. The head had longer hair on it than the rest of the body, and when it started flipping its head left and right, we could see that long hair flipping back and forth. This is funny. It looked like a lead guitarist in the middle of some mad jam session, performing this twitching motion so fast that it was hard to comprehend why it would do so, but it was. When it ran into the woods, it led with its arms and hands, plowing everything out of its way. It was like a whirlwind of activity as it parted the brush and pushed forward through the undergrowth, slapping saplings and brush aside with seemingly no regard for getting hurt. Excuse me. We could clearly see when it moved out of the cover of the roots that everything about its body was tall, well-formed, and muscular. The biceps and forearms looked like tree limbs, and from the back, its upper thighs must have been 16 inches deep, and its butt cheeks stuck out well beyond the thickness of its thighs. It was completely different in appearance from that of a human. Its hands and feet were extremely long, and when the feet were lifted as it stepped, I noticed that their bottoms looked like a leather shoe sole, with fur coming down the edges. At no time did it show its teeth, and when it disappeared, we could faintly hear it thrashing away for a fair amount of time before everything went silent. Of course, we don't know if it had broken into a clearing or if it was just too far away to hear it, but at that point, the encounter was over. What do you think of that? Pretty strange, huh?
Something else, man.
Yeah, and again, this is a family that's used to being outside, naturalists from their own description of themselves, been to this place before, didn't make mention of ever seeing anything like it there before, and suddenly the encounter strikes. Who's to say when and how one meets up with Bigfoot?
Yeah. No doubt about it. Wow. Something else. And so detailed, too.
Yeah, well, I try to I know some people are impatient and they're like, get on with it already. But, the details, to me, are a credibility factor.
Absolutely.
And look,
plus you don't know, like you read about the researchers, right, that are really researching Bigfoot, Sasquatch. The best ones always say that they make note of everything because you don't know later on if that's going to be important or not.
Right. Well, like it's almost like finding evidence at a crime scene, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You pick up whatever's laying around, a gum wrapper.
Somebody later on, they might be like, oh, and the ear was really interesting. It had this detail. Yeah. And then you're like, I remember someone talking about that, but I didn't write it down.
That's right. Yep. And
that's not good.
Hypercritical to me to to listen to somebody who knows, the moon was full and it was windy. It had just stopped raining. This shows somebody that's really paying attention. It also has a good memory,
Yeah, I mean, maybe there was a great horned owl walking along looking like an alien.
Right. Look,
obviously.
Here he comes again.
The moon was shining on him. Made him look metallic.
Yeah, so that was a great encounter, what's
That's
interesting
awesome.
too, the way they said that this thing was twitching nervously.
Yeah.
There's something about some of these encounters. Remember the nervous bus? The guy at the nervous man standing at the bus stop?
Yeah. Yep.
And here we have this guy, he describes it as a lead guitarist with the hair flipping around, twitching around.
That's wild.
I had another encounter, I can't remember which one it was now, where the guy described that the Bigfoot is twitching like a crack addict. I mean, I don't know what that means, but I guess, crack
Thankfully,
addict.
yeah.
Jumping around or, can't sit still or whatever, But
very cool.
Interesting that, though, when this thing realized that it had been found out, that it bolted.
Yeah.
And unlike the Freeman footage where this thing just kind of turned and walked away like, you're not going to do anything to me, this thing took off quick.
Yeah. Well, of course, I'm sure it depends on, the prior encounters. Like if somebody squeezed off a couple of shots at it at some point in time, it's going to move more quickly out of there, right?
Yeah, you took the thought right out of my head.
Yeah.
Because it could have
versus
been
somebody leaving food for it or something like that. It's just like any other animal.
Right. And, obviously this is some type of park, probably super rural. But they did mention also that the province cuts swaths out of the tree to let growth come up that deer can eat.
Yep.
So there's probably some chainsaws going on in there from time to time, and who knows who else is up there,
Yeah, no doubt about it. Probably a bit of a fire break, too, in the forest.
Yeah. And you're right. You don't know if and when somebody may have taken a crack at one of these things, that was out there and had a gun. And maybe they were awakened to the fact that, wow, things explode out here. And, oh, by the way, I'm bleeding. Jeez. Yeah, so that's it. Another incredible encounter from the North Country.
It's a good one. Definitely
stuff.
a good one.
Good stuff. So what do we got today in our listener mail?
We got some good listener mail. So the first letter comes in from Mike S. And this is kind of cool because Mike wrote in about the Minnesota Iceman, which I think we did in our last podcast, which was pretty cool, in Cryptids and Other Oddities. And he said, I wrote to you once before, and I'm not going to read his whole letter. He has a super detailed letter, but we're going to focus on this part here. But this time I'm writing in regards to your show on the Iceman. I remember my father taking us to the county fair when I was around 8 years old. I'm 59 now, so around 1968 or so, which is the time we learned in that report that the Iceman was out going to these fairs and stuff.
Yeah.
So Mike continues to write, anyway, at the fair was this sideshow thing about the Iceman. This was still about 4 or 5 years before I ever saw the famous Patterson-Gimlin footage, so I didn't know what to expect. Although by that time I had seen the movie The Abominable Snowman of the Himalaya. And he writes, and it scared the bleep out of me.
Yeah.
Seeing the picture you posted of the Iceman brought back so many memories of the totally uneasy feeling I had looking at this thing. Of course, I had no way of knowing if it was the replacement you mentioned, but I do remember how disturbingly real it seemed, and I do remember the arm going over the head like that, and the head itself. the thing that really bothered me was the way the head seemed to be attached to the shoulders with no or very little neck. It gave me a weird feeling of almost wanting to tear up for some reason, but could not understand why. Years later, when I saw the Patterson-Gimlin film on some TV show, I got the same feeling again, but even more so this time. I know it sounds silly, but there was something about my child brain that looked at both those things and thought, that thing is real.
Wow.
Since then, I've always maintained an interest in the subject, and now that I find myself living in an area where there have been some sightings over the years, I may start to do some squatching.
Wow.
Awesome. Isn't that cool? We talk about it all the time, folks, where we do a report like this, and then you write in, and you saw it at a fair, in 1968. How cool is that, Bill?
It's super cool, and you can only imagine how many tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people saw exactly the same thing.
Oh, I know.
And
super cool.
Yeah, and kind of weird, too, the way he kind of... it's almost like he felt some kind of remorse, or he was teary-eyed about seeing this thing,
Yeah, kind of like it's a being, right?
Yeah, he felt sorry for seeing it in a block of ice,
Yeah.
And this is why I say, look, people hear me always say at the end of the show, always carry more gun than you think you're going to need. And I do believe that because, man, if you catch one of these things in a bad day, your butt's grass and the Sasquatch is the lawnmower. That's what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? We're talking mulching blade and leaving you on the lawn.
Awesome.
So, but I understand seeing a creature and having some feelings about it, or feeling sorry for something.
Sure.
Especially looking at it in the block all beat up, wondering how it got in there.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not for plugging a Bigfoot and freezing him in a block of ice to take him around and show him to everybody. So I hope people don't get the wrong idea out there, but I'm definitely not interested in shooting one unless I had to.
Right.
Wow, that is really cool, Kev. What a response to a show.
I know, it's awesome. I love to see that one. All right, we're going to move on and go to Carla in Montana. She says, or writes, fantastic listening experience. You're right that there are many credible videos hitting the market which are not well known. And that Craven video took the cake. People bicker back and forth as people will, but one has to be numb in the brain to disavow all of those that you and Kevin have pointed out to date. Your podcast and books are aptly named Terror in the Woods. What else could one be but terrified if they were to encounter such a beast? Thanks. Love you guys.
Oh, my goodness.
Cool.
Yeah. Peace out, chickie.
Thank you, Carla.
Yeah, well, there you go, man. Who's to say how one's going to react when you're confronted with such a creature? But I think she's right that most people would be like the guy in the swamp picture, Kev, again. Once that thing stood up, man, I don't even know if the guy was armed or not. Maybe he was just hiking with a camera and said, I'm out of this joint. But, I got a feeling that most people are not going to be hanging around too long in close quarters with one of these things.
Yeah, it's funny. You're bringing it to mind. In the Kelly Hopkinsville encounter that I talked about earlier. Remember I said after they saw it, they ran down to the police station. They brought back the police and newspaper person and a photographer from the newspaper. And photographer brought his wife with him. Mm-hmm. Turns out in the account. And she was super disappointed at the end when they were leaving that they didn't see anything. And she was kind of critical of a couple of members of the family. And I forget exactly what they said, but they said, you're lucky that you didn't see those things, because your husband would have, basically dropped that camera on the ground and ran out of here like a kindergarten schoolgirl. That's not the exact quote.
Yeah, I'm getting it.
Yeah, it was good, though. All right, our last note comes in from Lois. And get this, Bill, I'm going to pronounce this town correct. From Aquabog, New York.
Oh, right here on the island.
Right there on the island. I used to have lunch in Aquabog way back when.
The Elbow Room.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember the name of the place.
Yeah, there's two Elbow Rooms now. The Elbow Room 1 and the Elbow Room 2.
Well, Aquabog has to be a booming metropolis.
Well, I wouldn't call it a booming metropolis, but, there's a few more people there now.
All right, so she says, I love your podcast. It's the best in the business. Bill, on a non-Bigfoot related topic, obviously I live where you do. Have you ever heard anything about cougar sightings here on the island? This is certainly under your other oddities category. Now, by cougars, I don't suppose she's talking about older women that chase younger men? Because you certainly have those on your island.
Yeah, there's definitely more than a handful of them. Good grief. Yeah.
Sorry, Lois, you walked right into that.
Yeah, Lois, you were set up for that. But, it's really odd. I actually have two associates, both of them very credible. Kevin, one, my friend Danny the fisherman. Mm-hmm. Danny is not one to BS, which is why I have him as a fishing partner, because when we share information with each other, it's credible and truthful. No fish stories, no baloney. I did or I didn't, and how big were they, and what tide were they on, and what did I use? Danny actually sighted a cougar a number of years ago, Kev, in his backyard in North Bellport.
Wow.
Now, when Danny told me that, he's a hunter, he's a marksman, he's a fisherman, no baloney. When he told me that, I was like, wow. And then a coworker of mine who happens to be, let's just say, a director, high-level individual, had a house on a piece of property by the Pine Barrens, Kevin. I live on the edge of the Pine Barrens.
Yeah.
He is also an avid gun collector and has a vault filled with handguns. He's out in his yard one day. He's well familiar with the deer and all the other nonsense around. And he's out in the backyard at night and sees a widespread pair of yellow eyes looking at him, peering out from behind one of the pine trees in the property behind his house. And he went in the house to get a pistol and thought twice about having a crack at this thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, you should bring something a little bigger.
Yeah, well, and this individual, I won't mention his name, but very intelligent man. And his observations were that the height from the ground and the width of the eyes was way too wide to be anything here on the island.
Yeah.
And he thought it was a cougar. He called the...
Could be. I mean, they're super stealthy. I lived out in eastern Washington, as you know, Bill, for a while, and there are a lot of cougars out there. But they're super hard to see, too. Like, it was interesting. Even when they knew they were out there, like, people would see a glimpse of a tail, going around their house or something. Like, they're just so sneaky and so stealthy.
Yeah. And my thought, Kev, of course, has always been, now, we have coyotes here on Long Island. Right. There's been a couple of sightings. and there's been pictures of them. We know they're here. How the heck are they getting to Long Island? Yeah. How the heck does a cougar, what is it, coming over the Throgs Neck Bridge?
I was thinking it takes the Port Jefferson Ferry. Yeah.
Dresses up as a horned owl and sits on top of the...
Well, I was going to say, you sure it wasn't a horned owl?
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been an owl.
Yeah, it could have been an owl. You're right.
If people mistake owls for aliens, it could be a cougar.
Very strange. Well, that was an
Awesome.
excellent question, and so there you have it. Just really weird stuff, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very cool. Well, folks, it comes to an end of another great podcast. I thank you. You've been listening to me. You've been giving us great reviews. Please continue while you're there now. Click open your podcast player that you're listening to. Give us 5 stars, please. It's really important that you do that because you continue to bring more listeners to the podcast. And as we get more listeners on the podcast, we can continue to improve the quality of the podcast as well. So thank you very much for all of those 5-star reviews, and be safe out there in this crazy world we live in, and be careful.
Absolutely. And remember, always carry more gun than you think you're going to need. Sleep tight.